It's been 10 years since the last book of the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, was published, and 20 years since the first book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And yet, this book series is as popular as ever. Considering the massive cultural impact Harry Potter has had, it's easy to forget that it wasn't always the only game in town when it came to the whole wizard, witch, school subgenre. In fact, when Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was originally published in 1997, there had previously been more than a few successful novels within this subgenre. This is not meant to imply that J.K. Rowling is a plagiarist in any way, because her stories definitely differ from these other tales. But when she started the Harry Potter series, she was working within a subgenre that had previously been established. In this video, I will cover 5 examples of this subgenre that predate Harry Potter, and in chronological order. Keep in mind, while this video uses film and TV footage that may have come after Harry Potter, I am referring only to the books that inspired these adaptations. So let's get started.
Come on.
While there are references to wizardry schools in some very old stories, for instance in some adaptations of Arthurian legend, or Scholomance, the black magic school mentioned in Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, the beginning of this subgenre is thought to have started in 1953 with Theodore Cogswell's short story, The Wall Around the World. This may be the first time the wizardry school is a central setting in the story, and its current students are the main characters. The short story was first published in the Beyond Fantasy Fiction magazine, and follows Porgy Mills, a young student in a school of magic, who becomes obsessed with the enormous wall that surrounds the world, and what might lie beyond it. Unlike in Harry Potter, there are no muggles or muggle world that Porgy is aware of. As far as Porgy knows, humans have always studied magic and abhorred science, and it is this last point that gets Porgy into some trouble. No magical broomstick is capable of flying high enough to clear the wall, nor does any spell aid in crossing it. So instead, Porgy uses some sacrilegious science to build a glider. Using the glider in conjunction with a large magical broomstick, Porgy is able to reach the top of the wall, where he meets a mysterious man in black, and the true purpose of the wall is revealed. The plot of this story differs greatly from Harry Potter, but the story does introduce a few concepts that would later show up in the Potter books. For instance, an education institution very much like our own, that teaches magic rather than science, and the idea that spells and broomstick flying are standard classes at this institution.
Hogwarts and Clorthos, Clorthos and Hogwarts. They go hand in hand. The best top 2 wizarding schools there are.
Elements from this story may have inspired all the other entries on this list, like our second entry, A Wizard of Earthsea, by Ursula K. Le Guin. Originally published in 1968, A Wizard of Earthsea is the first in a series of 6 books set in the fantastical island world of Earthsea. The story follows Dunny, aka Sparrowhawk, a young budding wizard on the island of Gaunt. When Dunny saves his village from invaders by masking it in a magical fog, it catches the attention of the most powerful mage on the island, Ogion. Ogion takes Dunny as an apprentice, but not before he gives him his true name, Ged. I know, it's a lot of names for one character. I'll stick with Ged from now on. In spite of his talent, Ged soon gets into trouble, so Ogion decides to send him to the school for wizards on the island of Roke, where not surprisingly, he gets into even more trouble. While trying to best an especially douchey classmate, Ged attempts a very difficult spell, but inadvertently unleashes a deadly shadow that quickly attacks him. The school's archmage manages to drive the shadow away, but dies saving Ged's life. After his recovery, Ged soon discovers the shadow is pursuing and attempting to possess him. Eventually, Ged decides to confront the shadow, but first he must find the one thing that can destroy it, its true name. There are some clear differences between The Wizard of Earthsea and Harry Potter, the most obvious being that the latter is set in a modern fantasy world, while the world of Earthsea is an ancient or medieval-like fantasy realm. There are also some undeniably similar elements. For example, the shadow is very much like a Dementor in appearance, but also a kind of dark counterpart to Ged, as Voldemort is to Harry. An even more glaring similarity is the prominent facial scar Ged receives after the shadow attacks him, so perhaps a few of these elements did influence J.K. Rowling just a tad. It should be mentioned that the overall themes in Earthsea are very much in keeping with the author's Taoist beliefs, while the themes in Harry Potter are decidedly more Western.
How do you know my true name?
You told me yourself.
Next, we have a little gem of a children's book from an author better known for her Arthurian adaptations. The Little Broomstick by Mary Stewart was originally published in 1971. Unlike the previous entries on this list, the protagonist, Mary, is a completely non-magical and very normal girl, who inadvertently gets caught up in the dangerous world of witches. After missing an opportunity to spend her summer holidays with her cousins, Mary must stay with her great-aunt Charlotte, at her isolated manor in rural Shropshire, England. On the grounds of the manor, Mary notices a strange black cat, who leads her to a mysterious patch of purple flowers. Mary shows these to the gardener, who recognizes them as the magical fly-by-night flowers from Old Witch lore. While sweeping up, Mary accidentally smears her broom with the fly-by-night flowers, and is instantly carried by the broomstick through the air, away from the manor and to the Endor College of Witchcraft. Endor may somewhat resemble Hogwarts in appearance, but its mission and values are quite different. The witches there intend to harm and annoy mankind as much as possible. Luckily, the faculty mistake Mary for a student. But when Mary discovers a department full of imprisoned animals, she learns that the witches of Endor are up to a particularly heinous scheme that only she can stop. The Little Broomstick introduces a number of elements that later authors of this subgenre were no doubt influenced by. For instance, like Hogwarts, the Endor College of Witchcraft is hidden from the world of normal, non-magical people. That is, unless you find some fly-by-night flowers and fly there via broomstick. Endor College also resembles an old British university, as Hogwarts does in places. However, the plot and characters of the two stories differ widely. Regardless of this, The Little Broomstick is simply a fun read. It starts slow, but gradually draws you into its strange, magical, and highly suspenseful world.
約束したんだから、一緒に帰ろうって。
Moving on to another story about a school of witches, but this time a much more benevolent one, we have The Worst Witch by Jill Murphy. This series began in 1974 with the publication of The Worst Witch, and ended with the 7th entry, The Worst Witch and the Wishing Star, in 2013. The main protagonist of the series is Mildred Hubble, a student at a magical all-girls boarding school called Miss Cackle's Academy for Witches. In the first novel, Mildred is constantly being picked on by her fellow classmates and underestimated by her teachers. She also has a penchant for getting into trouble, thus earning a reputation for being the worst witch. In spite of this, Mildred manages to save the school from a plot to turn everyone in it into frogs. While this should save her reputation, in the following novel, The Worst Witch Strikes Again, Mildred gets into more trouble, and so must prove herself once again. You might detect a bit of a pattern here, but hey, don't mess with the formula if it works. In terms of its setting and structure, The Worst Witch may be the most Potter-esque story on this list, especially in the way that each book in this series takes place over one school term, although with Potter it's a full school year per book. Miss Cackle's Academy also mirrors Hogwarts in its resemblance to a British boarding school. However, the two series differ in plot, characters, and overall tone. Compared to the Potter books, The Worst Witch series is definitely a lighter and more humorous tale that draws a bit more from real boarding school life than the Potter books do.
Oh, Mildred. Sorry.
Finally, we have one of the most beloved and longest-running fantasy novel series of all time. And when I say longest running, I'm talking 41 novels, not including the spin-offs. Terry Pratchett's Discworld series began in 1983 with the publication of The Color of Magic, and ended with The Shepherd's Crown in 2015. The Discworld series filled a niche that likely didn't exist before Pratchett filled it. That being satirical fantasy. The series is very much a sardonic take on fantasy tropes, and at times a parody of other fantasy novels, but somehow it also manages to be a great fantasy story in its own right. The first novel follows the inept wizard who only knows one spell, Rincewind. Rincewind has been expelled from the Unseen University for Wizards, and falls into the role of tour guide for Discworld's first tourist, Twoflower. Together, the two get into a number of strange and humorous adventures, until the follow-up novel, The Light Fantastic, in which Rincewind must save Discworld from imminent destruction by using that one spell he knows. Although several of the series' main characters are alumni or faculty of the Unseen University, the school itself is not a central setting in the first two books of the series, but is frequently referenced in them. The university grounds and school structure play a more prominent role in later novels of the series, like the fifth book, Sorcery, in which Rincewind must confront the vengeful wizard, Coin, who takes control of Unseen University and starts a war among wizards. Several later post-Potter entries in the series, like 1998's The Last Continent and 2009's Unseen Academicals, put the Wizards and the Unseen University in center stage. While the Unseen University isn't always a prominent setting in the Discworld series, the world the series inhabits contains some very Potter-esque elements. For instance, Ankh-Morpork, the city that the university resides in, resembles the wizard villages of the Potter books. The wide range of magical departments at the university, as well as the dueling academic factions within it, also mirror those at Hogwarts in some ways. But like Terry Pratchett himself stated, with regard to J.K. Rowling and the Potter books, if Tolkien hadn't written The Lord of the Rings, I couldn't have written the Discworld series. It's how genre works. Everyone makes their cake from the same ingredients. The stories mentioned in this list are not the only 5 to delve into the witch or wizardry school genre, but they are all stories worth reading if you'd like to explore the genre more. Some may insist that Rowling did borrow too much from pre-existing examples of this genre, and in fact several authors have tried to prove this in court, but unsuccessfully. I tend to agree with the courts that Rowling is in the clear. But I'm getting away from the point of this video, which is simply to explore some examples of great fantasy stories that might have been a tad overshadowed by the overwhelming behemoth of fiction that is Harry Potter. If you have any recommendations of books or stories within this subgenre, or simply fantasy books in general, let me know what they are in the comments below. Please like the vid and subscribe for more videos about fantasy books, movies, or just the fantasies that exist in your mind. Who knows? If you were thinking of buying one of the books featured in this video, please click on one of the links in the description below to buy it from Amazon, while also helping me make more videos. Until next time.
Anything can happen on Halloween. Your toenails go wrong and your hair turns green. Has anybody seen